Thanks for clicking on the stream. Probably a bit like yourself, I've been clear outs and tidy ups over the last period of lockdown, and I've been going through some old programs of shows in Newry Town Hall and the Arts Centre and the Parochial Hall, that creative triangle in the middle of Newry. And when you look at the names in it, it feels a bit like the roll call of that creative generation through all those years. So with our performance spaces is dark and at this time of lockdown, I thought it would be nice to catch up with people who were involved with the shows down the years. So today I'm joined by actor, director, producer, fundraiser, a man of many parts and many talents, Jim McGuigan. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Declan. Thanks a million. That's making me sound very important there. It's not at all.
That was only the opening. It'll get worse after that. Listen, Jim, before we talk about shows, you are a Forrest Gump. You've been walking and walking.
I've taken up walking. I started walking last year on the 1st of January 2020. And unfortunately, I had a couple of days off in January where I wasn't feeling well. But I got back on the road again on the 11th of January. So from the 11th of January 2020 to today, I haven't missed a day. And really enjoying it. It's really helped. Initially, it was just to do 100 days of walking. But when the 100 days were up, we were into April 2020 and we were in the middle of lockdown. So what else could you do? Only keep walking. So I think I've it's altogether it'd be 350 odd, but you take out the 9 days when I broke it up in the 11 days, it's about 300 and it's almost 400 days of walking. So it is.
And if anybody follows your timeline, Jim, you're not only walking, you're also capturing a lot of images and taking a lot of photos of the area. Do you have a favorite walk over this last year?
Well, I suppose that I love sort of up around Kilbrony, because Kilbrony, it's, as you know, it inspired C.S. Lewis to write about Narnia. And whilst there is some lovely areas at the public access up to, you know, Clockmore, up to the Big Stone and Kodak Corner, and then it has the Narnia trail for the children. When you venture further into it, there are some really beautiful areas where you can actually see where the inspiration for Narnia came, with, you know, the mushrooms and the fungi are growing and the moss is taking over and everything else. And very, very few people venture in that far. And it is fabulous. And then, of course, we're right on the doorstep of the Mourne Mountains. So you can go up any of the mountains, Comada, Donard, Slieve Martin, out to Knockshee, any of those places. And for somebody like me, who's been a couch potato for 35 years, to find my way up into the Mourne Mountains. And what I'm planning to do as soon as this lockdown's finished is to do the 7-7, which is the 7 highest peaks. And myself and a cousin whose big birthday is on this year, we're going to head up on one of those days in April, hopefully if the lockdown's sorted out, and do the 7-7s. We're going to head off at about 5 or 6 in the morning and do that. So really looking forward to that. Really enjoying it. It's great for both physical and mental health. I definitely recommend it.
And I love the way you casually say, I have my medal here. Let me check.
Oh, yes. Hold on a second.
No, you're all right. No, it's breaking up your background. It's breaking up your background.
It's shaking my background. Look. There's one. And here, there's the other one. Sorry, it's not showing up here with these virtual backgrounds.
So, those are virtual medals. They're disappearing.
Virtual medals.
Listen, well done at the running. Back to the shows, you know, running probably wasn't in your DNA all those years ago. Were shows and musicals when you were at school? Did you take part in shows and musicals at school?
No. The only thing I did was the Christmas pageant in primary school. And I was picked because I wasn't a bad singer. And I was asked to sing a wee solo piece, We Three Kings from Moriadar. I was asked to sing that. And I could sing it beautifully in rehearsals. But see, the night that all the mummies and daddies were there and everybody was there, I couldn't be heard behind a wet paper bag. The nerves got the better of me. I was too nervous and I couldn't cope with it at all. And it didn't work. So after that, I said, right, I'm never singing or never doing anything again. And I didn't do anything because my family, my dad and my family were into football. And that was all happened around our house. My brothers were all into football, and there was a bit of music about the house. There was always music about it. My mother always sang. But I do recall being taken from our primary school, St. Patrick's Primary School in the Meadow in Newry, across to the Abbey Grammar School. And there was a production of Oliver on. and the whole classroom were marched across the town in pairs, paired up, and walked across the town. And I remember being just mesmerized at seeing this Oliver, and it was fantastic. And I remember just coming home and telling my mum all about it, and it was wonderful. And wouldn't it be great to be able to do something like that? But to me, that was another world. I didn't realize it. Yeah. And then I transferred school at 11 and went to the Abbey, but I was never really involved in any of the productions. But I remember going to see Smite.
Did you go through the fish at all?
No fish or anything. I was in Father Moore's choir. I don't know whether you remember Father Seamus Moore.
Father Moore auditioned me for the choir and told me to come back in a year.
Oh,
I never went back.
Here, I was fortunate then. I must have got him on a good
You were
day,
lucky.
like me. I was a wee boy soprano, and I went to the rehearsals every week at the back of the cathedral, and it was fantastic. I just loved singing, and I managed to get the long gown on a few times, and did the psalms and the solos on the altar with the long robes and the big scarlet ribbon and everything else. And I did it a few times myself, but a few other guys. I remember there's one guy, Eddie McAteer, who made a bit of a name for himself in singing, and then went to America and sang around the bars and clubs there. And Veronica Devine, of course, our own Veronica Devine would have been one of the soloists as well. But I absolutely loved the singing. And then I didn't really do anything else. I remember being picked for a show in the Abbey then when I was about 14 or 15. But our musical director, the main man in the Abbey at that stage, he wasn't too well, Gus Torrymans. And Gus was a very famous musical director, and he took ill at the time, and the show didn't happen. So I never thought any more of it, because I wouldn't have known enough about it to be that way encouraged. And because I didn't do the facias, I wasn't aware of the sort of energy that went on, and I wasn't aware of what I could achieve by getting involved in them. And that was it.
When was the first time you saw a show in the town hall?
Well, I'll tell you how the first time I saw a show in the town hall was 1981, and I'll tell you how I saw it. I was working in Belfast at the time. I'd started work in the civil service. I was hitching a lift home, and I was standing at the end of the M1 thumbing a lift because
as you did in those days.
Spent all my money at the weekend misbehaving and hadn't enough money for the bus. And a couple from Newry picked me up, Donal and Mary Fagan, a very famous couple from Newry, involved Newry Musical Society. Poor Mary just passed away a couple of weeks ago. And they picked me up on the road, and they were playing music in their car, and it was Hello Dolly. And you know the way you sort of know a song, your mother or your father have probably sang it, or there's probably been an old record in the house from years ago. And they were playing this song, and I started singing along with them. They were singing, and I started singing too. Oh, you can sing, Jim, you can sing. So the next thing was, they said, well, look, we're in this show, you can come and see it. And they organized to get tickets for us. And I went along on the Monday night to watch the show. So I just, again, was blown away. I thought this was the sort of thing only happened on the West End. Yes, Hello Dolly. Absolutely. I thought this sort of thing only happened on the West End or in Broadway. So again, through Donald's nephew was an old friend of mine from school, Kevin, and Kevin was there that night, and I said hello to him, and he happened to be working backstage. And he says, why did you come and work backstage for me the rest of the week? Well, he didn't have to ask twice. I was in there and I was backstage for the rest of the week. But then I got a promotion in work, and I was transferred up to the Maiden City, and went up to Derry then to work for a year or two. And then a couple of years later, again, I was looking for a lift, and Donal and Mary offered me a lift home, and they were starting work on a new show 1983, that was Calamity Jane. And they said, why don't you join us? Why don't you join? I said, oh, no, sure, those are all people who can sing and act. They're all very talented people. What do I know about that sort of thing? So the only way to get me to go along, they came out to my door and dragged me out and got me in and took me to rehearsals. And as I say, the rest's history. I was bitten by the bug, and I never missed a show after that.
Was that Hello Dolly the one with Margaret Nolan?
It was. Charlie Smith played Van de Gelder. Margaret Nolan played Dolly. It was fabulous. People like Donal O'Hanlon were in it. So.
I'll tell you a story about that Hello Dolly, because the Donal O'Hanlon and Tony Elmore.
Yeah, that's right.
Played Barnaby Tucker and Cornelius Hackett.
Yeah.
And it went to Waterford, and the scene where they were in the shop, they came out of the shop to do the Out There, There's a World Outside of Yonkers.
Yonkers.
But they stood up on this chest, which
Yeah,
was grand in Newry, because the follow spots in Newry are quite low. But in
yeah, yeah,
Waterford, the follow spots are quite high. And the angle of the beam of the follow spots was such that when they stood up on the chest,
yeah.
I was working one of the follow spots in Waterford that year. We could actually only light them from about the waist down, and the rest of the stage came down in a dim light. So you get these two guys going out there, but only their chests, their feet were lit. And the adjudicator and Donal O'Hanlon always reminds me of this in McConaughey. He had the best lit feet in the show that night. So
Those were the
that was
days.
a
Those
low dollar.
Waterford days were fabulous.
Waterford was
So,
brilliant, wasn't it?
Waterford was, that was my holiday every year for about 10 years.
Mm.
Because if you went to Waterford, you couldn't afford to go to Ibiza or Torremolinos or anywhere to go. Waterford was your holiday. But that long weekend in Waterford was so exciting because it took you a day to get there, first of all. Then when you got there, you spent the first day, you would travel down on the Thursday. On the Friday, you started rehearsals at 9 o'clock in the morning with
And there was no
the
motorway to get to it then. It was
there was no
it was an
motorway.
expedition, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, you would ride into Dublin city centre, around the South Circular Road and down that way. And you, when you got there on the morning, the Friday morning, you start rehearsals at 9 o'clock. You did a full band call between 9 and 12:30. Then you got a break for your lunch, and then you come back in to do a run on stage with the pianist. And you run until about 5:30. Then you get back over to your hotel, got a quick bite to eat. That was if you could afford the hotel. Most times we were in B&B. You get a quick bite to eat, and then you'd be back in the theatre for 6:30 for makeup, costumes, sound check. Well, there were no sound checks because we didn't need microphones.
Right. Yeah.
Everything was done. You projected your
Acoustic,
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the orchestra, of course, was strings, brass, woodwind, and the drummer. There wasn't all the electrics that you would have now. So, but those were fabulous days. But that was always your best show. Like you worked your show up in Newry to get it the best you could, and then you took it to Waterford to compete.
And the party afterwards was great, wasn't it?
The party, John Grogan. Don't know why you remember John.
I remember him playing the piano.
Yeah, he never had music.
Yeah.
He never had music.
Yeah.
You hummed the song and he caught on to it.
Yeah.
And he was fabulous. And you had Charlie acting as master of ceremonies. Then you had Wesley Livingston, our president, coming in and doing a few numbers. And everybody, even if you weren't the best singer in the world, you got a chance to come in there and do your wee party piece. And for some of us, it was sing maybe a bit of a song that the chorus could join in and make us look good. Or with the like of Ethel Fitzpatrick, you could have Ethel standing up, and were you that Frances Farrelly talking, doing one of her fabulous orations, okay, those were fabulous days. I don't think we'll ever repeat those days. I know we took the Bosco down a few times to Waterford and we had a great time, but they were never like those early days.
Good old days, Jim.
Yeah,
it's a generational thing, that because every generation I think has its good old days. It just they don't know it at the time. What about you obviously give a lot of time to NMOS. Newpoint Players, then you joined in Newpoint Players.
Yeah.
You're going to program here for Blood Brothers. Was that your first Newpoint show?
What a show to start with Newpoint Players with. You just got a phone call and you said, Jim, would you come down here and read a wee bit of Sean Hollywood, the famous multi-talented Sean Hollywood, both as an actor and a director. He was fabulous. And he brought you in and he handed you a bit of a script and got you to read a wee bit. And Manus O'Boyle was the musical director. They asked me to play. Now, I had never seen Blood Brothers. And it was funny, actually, because not only had I not seen it or read it, I didn't know anything about the author, the educating Rita and all that background. Didn't know anything like that at all. And I remember taking the script home. I took the script home and I read the script. And I says, I mustn't have read it too well because I didn't realize it was set in Liverpool. Because for me, it could have been in Belfast. Mm-hmm. And I started reading it with a Belfast accent. And, you could see the twins being split up and one going to one side of Belfast and the other going to the other side. And it worked just exactly the same.
Yeah.
But then when I came back into rehearsals and Sean then told us all about it and introduced us to the characters and talked us through. And as we developed and workshopped it and everything else, sure, what a show to premiere with, But I still think we had a fabulous lineup. Like we had Declan McDade and Joe Smith playing the twins, and you could not have had two better guys to play those two parts. They were the perfect age. They were the perfect makeup. Their personalities almost fitted perfectly into the characters. And then we had, I think it was Mary Murphy, was it, who played Mrs.
Mary
Johnson?
Murphy was Miss Johnson, and
yeah,
you were Mr. Lyons, and Mrs. Lyons was sadly passed away, Mary McStay.
Yeah, Mary McStay. Yeah, I worked opposite Mary. She was a pleasure to work with, and again, so talented and so unassuming.
Yeah,
they were so modest with it. I've worked with all sorts of wonderful actors over the years, but I would say that was one of the best principal lineups I ever worked with.
You talked about the festival. Did you enjoy the festival circuit, Jim? Or do you enjoy
the festivals? They were nearly as good as Waterford. Going around, and the team, the camaraderie you built up with the team, with the cast, the crew. And as you know, when you're in Newpoint, there's no stars in Newpoint. You could be playing the lead part in a play 1 minute, and the next minute you're dismantling the set, you're rigging lights, you're loading up, you're loading a trailer, you're loading a van. You could be doing anything, because Sean Hollywood always says there's no stars in these shows. We all muck in and everybody does everything. So you could have been painting a set, could have been building a set, you could have been doing scene changes, even when you were playing lead parts. And that was the camaraderie that was built up touring. If you had 8 or 10, or sometimes it was up to 12 festivals you could have been doing around the country.
So where did Bosco Drama Group form up, Jim, and how did it grow into the great success that it is?
Well, the Bosco Drama Group came about. I was working as a social worker at the time in Newry, and this day I was acting team leader in one of the areas. I think it was for South Armagh, and I got a knock on my office door one day, and this a friend of mine, Willie McAllister, who was on the board of governors in the Bosco, he popped his head in. He was a colleague, a social work colleague, and he popped his head in and said, "Jim, can I have a word?" He said, "The young people in the Bosco want to do a show." He says, "and they don't have anybody to do it." He says, "It's a long time since they did a show." He says, "Charlie Smith and Sean Canavan used to do shows with the Bosco 30 years beforehand." He says, "But they've gone off and they do their own thing now." He says, "But the kids," he says, "there's a great bunch of kids up there, and they're in an area of the town that doesn't get a whole lot. There's not a lot going for it. There's a lot of unemployment and difficulties." And they said, would you come and talk to them about what it is involved in putting on a show, and maybe would you help them put on a show?" And I remember meeting with, it was Father Conor McConville and Rosie Keary at the time, and these 4 young people from the Bosco, young Joanne McAvoy, Mihal McAvoy, and there was wee girl McCrink, Sharon McCrink, and there's 3 or 4 young people came, and they wanted to put on a show. Now I think this was about February time, and I says, "Well, what were you thinking of?" This is, "It would be great to do Jesus Christ Superstar." I says, "Yeah, it would, wouldn't it?" I says, "When would you like to do it?" It says, "Oh, at Easter." I says, "But it's February now." I says, "You really, to put on a show like that, you need to plan for, it's almost a year in planning, but definitely at least 6 months, because you have to apply for a license, you have to apply to hire the theatre, you have to look at how you get costumes, you have to teach people music, you have to put together a production team." So they were all very disappointed leaving the meeting. I says, "But look, leave it with me and I'll see what I come up with." But I remember I went and spoke to a couple of friends of mine, and a good friend of mine, Linda Heaney, had just graduated with a music degree, and she was trying to get a job. She was looking for teaching opportunities, but she was also involved in the musical society and things like that. And another friend of mine had been a dance teacher, and she was a choreographer for years, Amory Morgan. And I get chatting to both of them, and I said, "Look, could we do something? Even if it's not at Easter, maybe could we do something later on?" I says, "No, there's no money. Nobody has any money to put this on, so we'll have to do it and see what happens, and we'll try and raise some money. We'll do bagpacks or a flag day or something like that. We'll raise the money for it." And so nobody ruled it out. So I remember going back to the management board and meeting Rosie again, Rosie Geary, the youth leader, and saying, "Look, we have an idea." And the show, we didn't think either of us could do Jesus Christ Superstar, because we didn't know. I didn't know how to direct a show. Didn't know. I was the back row of the chorus still at that stage with Newry Musical Society. And I was maybe getting the odd minor principal role to play, with the butler or something like that, And but we went back to them, and a show that we'd been involved in a couple of years previously, and we thought, would be a good one for young people, you know, for a youth club, was a show called Godspell. Stephen Sparks, who's subsequently written Wicked and so many other fantastic musicals, Pippin, and that's how it started. We just stuck an ad up then in the local paper and in the local churches and the local youth clubs, and suddenly we had 40 young people in a room who wanted to be involved in musical theatre, and most of them were from the Armagh Road, the Meadow, Mornview Park, the barracks around those areas, which were areas where there wasn't a lot of opportunities for young people. And we put on a fabulous show. And I remember, the set for that show was 12 wooden blocks, 4 ladders, and 2 planks. And that was the full set, because what we did was we kept rearranging the blocks, the ladders, and the planks to make pictures. We had Anne-Marie Morgan as a choreographer. And Anne-Marie Morgan is one of the best choreographers on this island, if not these islands. She is phenomenal. And what we did with that show and the way the children gelled together and the opportunities that evolved from that one show.
You've done incredibly challenging shows with the Bosco as well through the years.
Well, we try to do new things, but you know, to keep it going, we have to balance that out with doing older ones that are more like, we have to do the Olivers, the Annies, the ones that are going to put bums on seats and are going to make sure financially that we remain viable. But we've also done other ones. We've done some we did Jesus Christ Superstar twice, actually. And it is a challenging show to do it right, because now when people go to see a show, they expect to see almost a West End standard or the standard that they see in a show that it's taken 6 months to televise, you know. So we've done those. We've done some really modern and new shows. Susical, the musical, based on the books of Dr. Seuss, which is fabulous, absolutely fabulous for young people. And what was nice about that was we took extracts from it around the schools to encourage children to get involved. We did Honk. Honk is a modern interpretation of The Ugly Duckling, which is a fabulous show. But we take chances and we do other ones as well. We did Hot Mikado, probably pushing the boundaries there of what we should have been doing in a youth club, because we made it very sexy, a sexy version of the Mikado. And when you're doing something like that with a group of young people from the age of 14 upwards, you have to do it very carefully and you have to be aware of boundaries and everything else. But we did that. We also did some even more challenging ones. Hairspray was a fabulous one we did a few years back, where we needed a mixed race cast, and we cast it as it should have been cast. And it was fabulous, because a lot of those young people have stayed with us, and a lot more young people have stayed with us in the Bosco. So now we have very mixed race, very multicultural approach to everything that we do there.
You gave the groups opportunities to see the shows in the West End as well.
Yeah. Every January, Dervla, our youth leader and our secretary to our drama group, she organises our trip to London, and we link in. It all started, actually, you helped me, Declan, the first year we went to see Les Miserables. And Peter Corey, our good friend Peter, an absolute star of the West End and a great star and doing wonderful work back home now. He was playing the part of Javert at the time, and you helped me get in touch with Peter. And when we went over to London, that must have been the early 80s or mid 80s, we went over and we met Peter, and Peter organised for the young people to go backstage in the West End, and he showed them all the tricks of the trade backstage. He organised for the stage manager to show them around, show them how everything worked, and that was just phenomenal. And what's lovely over the last few years is every year now we've had 3 or 4 of our young people who are going off to theatre school or the musical theatre college. You know, we've had young people go through Lane, different schools. And then, of course, last year we had the absolute privilege where Niamh Morgan, Anne-Marie's daughter, who's been one of our young people for the last 15 years, starring in Cats.
That's amazing, wasn't it?
Okay, it was brilliant. We actually organised our own mini premiere in Newry, in the Newry cinema, and we had the local press and everything in, and we had the limousines and the red carpet out at the cinema here, and Niamh very kindly came along as a special guest and shook hands and posed for photographs with all the young people, and the cinema were very helpful. So like those experiences are like for any young person. I was never exposed to that as a kid, so I think it's fabulous now that we can give those opportunities to our young people, and it's lovely to see that some of our young people now want and want to get involved in theatre, drama, musical theatre. And some of them have gone, like the assistant stage manager in the Lyric now is one of our young people, Amy, and her sister Ruth, who also trained, got her third level education in theatre. She has been traveling with Bill Kenwright and those guys in some of the biggest shows, and so it's great. It gives them an opportunity. We wish we had a theatre like the Opera House, to allow them to show their stuff on. But I have to say, we love our theatre, Newry Town Hall. It just, it's my second home. And I know for you, Declan, you can relate to that because you, both on and off stage, you've been involved in that. Like Newry Town Hall has such an emotional tie on us all that we love it. And it's fabulous just being involved in it and being on stage there.
Jim, where did Bosco for Africa then grow out of, and that outreach?
Well, it actually, I don't know whether you know a guy called Richard Moore with Children in Crossfire.
Yeah, no.
Richard Moore is very well known. He's an inspirational man from Derry who had the misfortune of being blinded by a rubber bullet in Derry in the early days of the Troubles. And Richard set up an organization called Children in Crossfire. And Martin Morgan, one of our members and a local school teacher, Martin spent 20 years teaching up in Derry and got involved with Richard and his colleagues in Children in Crossfire. And then Martin's parents passed away and he came back to live in Newry and got involved with the Bosco and the Musical Society. And he was telling me about his trips out to Tanzania with Children in Crossfire. And then when he moved back home, he had organized one or two trips himself to contacts he had out there. And what he would do is he would do a bit of fundraising and then head out. But Martin then had talked to me about his trips to Africa. And he says, well, why don't you come with me? And so it started off with just Martin and myself. And then 2 or 3 other people heard we were talking about it. And it suddenly mushroomed. And we said, well, let's do this properly. Let's set ourselves up properly. Let's do proper fundraising events and get it going. So we established a small charity. It is a very small charity. It's called Bosco for Africa. And we raise money. And every 2 years, we go to Tanzania to 2 areas in Tanzania, one being Kilimanjaro, a town called Moshi in the Kilimanjaro region, which is where a lot of Irish people go to climb mountains. And then to another place on the shores of Lake Victoria, a place called Mwanza, where our friends from Drummondtown, the SMA Fathers, have their base for Tanzania.
At the start, you were talking about your own family and you said there wasn't much of a musical tradition about then, but tradition is part of a show that you played the lead in, and a great performance. You see the way I did that? Just blended that in there. I hadn't rehearsed that one at all. As Tevier in Fiddler on the Roof. I think, it's still, it's up there with Les Mis as one of the greatest shows of all time, isn't it?
It's an all-time favorite of mine. I remember going to see it years and years ago. I didn't see the wonderful one that you were involved in with Sam Russell.
It wasn't wonderful just because of me, Jim. Be fair.
No, but you were part of it, so I have to give everybody the credit. But it was that one, and it won awards in Waterford, everywhere for Newry Musical Society, and Sam Russell played the part. May he rest in peace. Sam was an exceptionally talented actor. So I suppose it's coming up near 10 years, so 9 years ago, one of the local societies here was doing a Banbridge Musical Society. We're doing it, and I auditioned for the part of Tevier, and fortunately I got the lead part, and I just loved it. It's a part that you just live. I think you almost become Tevier. And you learn so much from playing the part about kindness, about change, about culture, and about caring for people, and how caring about people and caring for people can help then in changing your own thinking, because values that you may have had because of the way that you were brought up, which maybe come from your religious background, your cultural background, and everything, as your children then challenge you on that, and his daughters were challenging him. I loved it. And a couple of years later, I got a chance to do it again in Dundalk. So I couldn't miss the chance. I have done it twice, and I would love to do it again, but I'm probably getting a bit old now for it. And
to you, our traveling, touring Tevier, can I say thank you? Keep up the walking, and let's hope when the lights go on again, we're all there back on the stage again to populate that town hall stage with dreams and ambitions and life and vitality. But Jim, thanks very much
Yeah.
indeed, and keep walking.